folks at home. So what we're going to be doing today is preparing our pages to sketch on top. So what you can see here is a page that the preparation basically means you don't want your page to be white. We don't want to be working on white pages. So for this one, this is a finished sketch, but the preparation was gluing on these strips of colored paper, and then the sketch was done on top of that. So the sketch was done on a piece of tracing paper, which was then glued on, and this little flower was added as well. Here's another one. So I'm showing you some collage examples, and I'll show you how to collage, and then I will also show you how to add some watercolor techniques with the watercolors that you have at home. Okay, so this one, you can see there's a map in the background, also some tracing paper, which can be helpful for kind of muting out a color, kind of dulling it, putting it towards the background a little bit. I don't know if you can see that in this image. And then just a little strip of magazine to assist in the composition. Okay, so let's start with the collaging, since that's what I was just showing you. And you'll want a blank piece of paper, a glue stick, which you should have. I've already pre-cut the collage materials that I want to use. If you're in the classroom or happen to have access to a paper cutter, that can be nice. Otherwise, a ruler, scissors will do the trick. So when collaging materials down, what I recommend is, so you actually, it's better to do this on a scrap paper so you don't get glue all over your final page. So I'm going to put this to the side. And this is a little bit tedious, and you probably will want to skimp on it, but it's going to work best if you actually cover the entire surface with glue. Okay, and you have a smaller glue stick than this, so yours will be even a little more tedious, but you can do it. It's not. Turn it into a meditative activity. Just take your time. Okay, so I got this whole surface covered. And I'm going to, it's curling up a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to place it on my page where I want it. And then if you have a scrap paper, that can be nice to place on top and then really press it down in every direction. If you happen to be in school and have access to one of these, this is called a bone folder. This can also help for, I'm going to press in all directions. This can help to flatten it out. And if I really want this to be flat in the end, you're actually going to take the whole sketchbook and stick it under some heavy books for probably 24 hours. So it's going to be the most effective. Okay, so I got that down. And I'm going to place this here. And when you're choosing your collage items, they can be related to your plan. Like maybe you know that you want to draw a picture of your dog on it and you have a certain background that you want. They can also be completely random, and then you'll go through afterwards and sort of pick which sketch will go well with which background. They do not have to be related. Okay, so put some scrap paper on, press that down really nicely. And then I have tracing paper cut out. I'll put here, kind of mutes that. I have mixed feelings about that. I think I'm gonna do a smaller strip of tracing paper. It maybe covers just part of that. I like that better. I think that's more interesting. So I'm taking this tracing paper similarly, just the way you did the other things, and I'm going to put the apply glue right to the tracing paper. It will probably curl up like so. It's not a problem. Just flatten it out. Place it down. And take my scrap paper. Smooth it out. If you notice your scrap paper is getting some little bits of glue on it, grab new scrap paper. Great, I have a prepared piece, prepared page. And then I can, like I said, when I'm done with my pages, I would flatten all of these under a heavy book. All right, so let's show you some watercolor techniques working with the watercolors that you have in your supply kits. So these aren't like any special fabulous watercolors, but they should do the trick. I would recommend getting out the brushes that I gave you. They're going to be a lot better than this brush that it comes with. It's just really not a great brush. But it is there if that's all you have. If you happen to have a palette from your supply bag, that can be useful. It is not necessary. You can use this over here as your palette. So what I would recommend is, you can see what I did here. I kind of made my colors here into liquid watercolors. So the way I did that was I took my brush, a brush and water, took my brush with a little bit of water on it, and put a little bit of water at the bottom. This is a little yellowy, which is not ideal because I'm about to make purple. So just, I'm just brushing so I get a few little drops of water in there. I also have handy, excuse me, I have handy a paper towel, and I can dry off my brush if I don't want it wet for some reason, or I can get some of the excess water off on the edge. Now you can see my water is not clear anymore. If you really want your colors to be vibrant, you'll want to change your water, and you can use, if your parents will particularly appreciate it, but you can use just a glass or a Tupperware, anything for your water, or something from the recycle bin. It should wash out fine in the dishwasher. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make a blue here. So what I'm doing is I am brushing in this blue. I want to get a lot of pigment. Then I can kind of get it into here. You can see. Now I have like some nice wet blue paint. And I'm going to keep adding more. These paints aren't great quality, so you need quite a bit to really get a nice strong pigment. All right. And you do not have to do this. You can paint directly from the pan here, but if you want it to sort of flow more, then making these little paints can be helpful. Okay, so then what can I do with these paints? One, if you go in your kitchen and you have some salt can be great for making these little, here I made a little example I was just working on, so you can hopefully see. These little dots here are from the salt. The salt picks up some of the pigment. You might remember this from before. I probably have shown you. It'll pick up a little bit of the pigment and give you these cool crystally effects. It will only work if you have a lot of nice wet paint. It won't work once it's mostly dried, or if you don't have quite enough pigment in it. So that's where this is gonna be helpful. All right, so what can I do? I like to have scrap paper to test my colors. If you wanted to make, say, I'll show you the salt first. Okay, so I'm gonna do something like this. Take some of this nice red paint. I'm gonna make colored spots. Clean my brush. See what happens if I put a little dab of yellow in there. It's kind of cool. You get some of the blends in there. This will be one of my backgrounds of colored spots. This is I think it's fun. You might want to try this. You can see the paint on that one. I wet it first, and then the paint will sort of spread into that spot. Just gonna dab that. So I'm just dabbing. The thing with watercolors, we want to kind of let it do the work, let it flow the way it wants to. And I can take the salt because these are still really nice and wet. I'm not going to see any effect right away, but I'm going to put the salt on, and then once it dries, I should have some cool crystally effects. So I could do a whole page like that if I wanted of these spots. That could be a fun prepped page. If you wanted to do a gradient, which people often want to do, to go from one color to another, doesn't work great with these paints, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so you can try wetting the page first. It can help with the flow a little bit. Also, if you want, you can tape down the edges of your paper to keep it a bit flatter if you have some masking tape. All right, so I'm going to go from, like, when you're doing a gradient, you want to do colors that are similar to each other. So I'll go from yellow to green to blue. So take some yellow, bottom. You have to work wet to get it to blend from one to the other. Keeping that nice and wet. Let's see what happens when I go with my green. Doing the green, but then I'm kind of mixing it in gently down with where the yellow is. And I can keep mixing this, but you have to work kind of quickly as it starts. Once it starts to dry, it will not really mix together anymore. And this is curling a lot. I should have taped this down. That's why my finger is right on it. I'm grabbing more green. That's not actually bad. Not a bad gradient. Clean off my brush before I put it back in the yellow. Actually, you don't even need to put it back in the yellow. But notice I'm not brushing it a lot. I'm letting the paint sort of do the work. And then I'll also show you, if you want, you can make drips by then picking the page up. And you can get the colors to drip from one to the other. So that's kind of cool. I could even add more colors, like maybe I want to take a purple. I didn't make a purple yet, so I'll use this here. And get a lot of paint on there. And you can see what happens if I drip purple in there. Ooh, that could be cool. Mix this with each of those colors. Okay. But you can really do whatever you want. We can try splattering on there. So I'm just taking the brush and tapping it against my finger. I get some splatters. It's kind of a cool effect. So you can do quite a bit with these watercolors. And then if you want to work on this, let it dry. If you taped it down, let it dry in its taped down position. If you did not tape it down, that's fine, but it will probably be not super flat. So once it's dry, you might want to flatten this in a heavy book too. All right, so you also have a sheet of paper that is in Classroom that has a list of ideas that you can use to ways to prepare your paper. So you might want to take a look at that. It's got sort of endless ideas, but you are welcome to come up with whatever you want to do. You can scribble on a piece of paper. Anything you can do to your paper to keep it from being just a plain white piece of paper is acceptable and encouraged. Okay. All right, and then the next lesson will be on how do we then draw on these papers. Okay. Thanks.